He never raised his voice. He never hid. The room bent before he entered. The minds aligned before he spoke. And when he finally did, it wasn't a command, it was to confirm what everyone had already begun to believe. That is how Machiavelli moved through power, not as a conqueror, but as a shadow in the architecture of belief. He didn't control people. He studied them until control became unnecessary. Most try to win by force. They threaten. They chase. They impose. But Machiavelli understood something colder, something infinitely more permanent, that the deepest form of power is not in forcing behavior, but in shaping perception. You don't have to crush a person when you can craft the lens through which they see the world. Give them the illusion of choice, and they will march to your rhythm thinking it was their song all along. He didn't shackle bodies. He adjusted atmospheres. He didn't demand loyalty. He made disloyalty feel like self-betrayal. To be near him was to feel safe, seen, necessary. And that is how he won. Not by being loved, not even by being feared, but by becoming the silent architect of everyone else's desire. He noticed what others missed, that people don't follow strength, they follow story. The one who controls. The narrative controls the motion. And so while others were writing laws, Machiavelli was writing scripts in the minds of those who would enforce them. He didn't care about being right. He cared about being remembered. And remembered he was, not for the crown he wore, but for the strings he pulled in silence. He understood that control is a brittle thing. It cracks under pressure. It exposes itself in desperation. But influence, real influence, seeps in like scent, like light under a locked door. No one sees it arrive, but suddenly everything smells different. Everything glows in new shapes. People act differently, and they don't know why. That's not magic. That's psychology turned. Into art. He watched rulers rise with noise and fall with echo. He watched men parade power like armor and die by their own weight. But he moved behind them, a whisper behind the throne, a ghost inside the council, a man who saw that the most obedient servant is not the one afraid of punishment, but the one afraid of irrelevance. Give someone a role in your design, and they will hold it with their life. Machiavelli made people feel seen, not completely, just enough. Enough to make them trust. Enough to make them reveal the rest themselves. He knew that everyone is already carrying the tools of their manipulation, the need to be liked, the fear of being replaced, the hunger to be chosen. All he had to do was wait, watch, and then gently place the mirror in front of them. That's the secret. He didn't manipulate actions. He manipulated meaning. And when you control meaning, you don't need to move people. They move themselves. And still, he never underestimated the human heart. He didn't mock emotion, he mapped it. He knew love was a weapon, that guilt was a leash, that ambition was the flame that burned quietly until it exploded. And he didn't need to light the match. He just needed to know where the tinder was hidden. You see, Machiavelli didn't want power the way others did. He didn't need the applause. He didn't need the throne. He wanted the outcome. He wanted the lever that shifted the world with the smallest touch. That's why he smiled while others shouted. That's why he listened more than he spoke. That's why he knew the name of every servant and the secrets of every noble. Not because he wanted gossip, but because he understood what most never do, that people are predictable when you stop pretending they're not. He made allies of enemies by letting them feel victorious. He made followers of doubters by letting them believe it was their idea. He didn't fight the current. He built the riverbanks. And in every room he entered, he carried no sword. Only silence, attention, and the patience to wait for everyone else to reveal themselves. because they always do. Pride makes them speak too soon. Fear makes them reach too far. And vanity makes them trust the wrong hands. His hands, he never declared war. He simply made peace unbearable. He never stole loyalty. He offered comfort in chaos. And by the time they realized the terms of the deal, they had already signed their names with their own hands. That is the kind of power no law can touch. The kind that outlasts kings. The kind that doesn't fade when the crowd changes sides. Because it was never built on performance. It was built on precision. He didn't chase the spotlight. He bent the stage dot, and even now, centuries later, his name echoes not as a tyrant, not as a saint, but as a mirror, a man who understood what few are willing to admit, that people do not change by truth alone. They change by pressure, placement, timing, story. They change when the world around them whispers a new shape into their minds and convinces them it was always there. Machiavelli never needed to be in control. He simply needed you to believe you were. And that belief, so small, so subtle, would grow inside you like a seed dropped in the dark. You wouldn't question it. You'd water it yourself. You'd carry it across seasons thinking it was yours all along. And by the time you realized it had shaped your choices, your alliances, your self-worth, it had already become your roots. That is not force. That is art. That is power wrapped in humility. It does not shout. It does not reveal itself. It merely nudges and lets the human mind do the rest. He understood that the will of a person is not broken by pain, but by confusion. If you disorient someone just enough, not with chaos, but with contradiction, they will grasp for meaning. And whoever offers meaning first becomes their anchor, their gravity. He was that quiet voice in the fog, calm, clear, and calculating. You see, when people are lost, they do not look for truth. They look for familiarity. They look for comfort. And Machiavelli was fluent in the language of comfort, not the warm, kind, but the comforting illusion of structure. He offered structure not by imposing it, but by revealing its necessity. He made his way the only way that felt sane. This is where his genius truly lived, not in what he did, but in what he allowed others to believe they had done. The prince thought he ruled. The people thought they chose. The court thought they advised. And Machiavelli? He simply wrote. He suggested. He stood at the center of the web without ever appearing as the spider, because to stand at the center and still be unseen, that is mastery. And he never underestimated how hungry people are to matter. He didn't fight that hunger. He fed it just enough to keep them tethered. He made them feel important, never so much that they questioned him, but just enough to feel they were part of something necessary. And in that necessity he bound them. He saw clearly what most still refuse to, that most men do not act from logic but from fear of humiliation. They don't chase truth, they chase protection, from shame, from weakness, from irrelevance. And when you learn how to make someone feel unthreatened, you earn their openness. When you learn how to use their fear to shield your intent, they hand you the keys to their kingdom with trembling, grateful hands. He did not resist the ego of others. He learned to play it like an instrument. Pride is predictable. Arrogance is clumsy, and those who think themselves beyond manipulation are often its easiest prey. Machiavelli didn't argue with ego. He polished it, reflected it back to them, let them fall in love with themselves in his presence. And once they did, they associated that love with him. That was enough. He was not obsessed with being seen as right. He was obsessed with being effective. And to be effective in a world of noise, one must speak not to the mind, but to the story the mind already tells itself. He didn't interrupt those stories. He rewrote the ending. He understood that control is brittle, but understanding is durable. And to understand someone truly, deeply, not just their words, but their rhythm, their silences, their wounds, is to walk one step ahead of them forever. They will never question how you knew what they needed. They will only feel that you understood when no one else did. And that kind of power cannot be taken. It must be surrendered. So he made himself the one they turned to, not for orders, but for confirmation, not to be led, but to be reassured. And when reassurance becomes habit, the hand that offers it becomes sacred, untouchable, trusted. And in trust, he planted his design. He understood the art of timing, that pushing too soon reveals your intention, but waiting too long hands the game to someone else. So he moved like the tide, just enough, just when it was natural. The kind of influence that looks like coincidence. The kind of shift that feels like fate. And those who saw him as passive never noticed how he tilted the floor beneath their feet until they were already sliding. He didn't confront resistance. He bypassed it. He let people keep their pride as they surrendered. He never demanded confession. He created conditions in which they confessed to themselves. This is how he bent systems to his will. Not by rewriting the rules, but by becoming the reason the rules were obeyed. They followed him because they believed it was the safest way forward. They aligned with him because they thought he was merely echoing what they already knew. They trusted him because he never gave them reason to feel outmatched, only reason to feel understood. And what is more seductive than being understood? He knew that the ultimate form of loyalty is not built through favor or fear, but through emotional gravity, that sense that you cannot quite explain why you feel drawn to someone, but that you are, and deeply so. He became that presence, not heavy, not loud, but steady, present, always there, the one who sees what you don't say, the one who makes you feel chosen. And in that feeling, people gave everything. This is how Machiavelli mastered people, not by bending their actions, but by becoming the architect of their need, not by imprisoning the body, but by courting the heart and colonizing the imagination. He saw that freedom itself could be a cage, if framed the right way, that people would choose the familiar prison over the unfamiliar open door. And all he had to do was make the door feel uncertain, the outside feel unsafe, and his design feel warm, familiar, inevitable. And in the end, they would stay. Not because they had, but because they couldn't imagine leaving. This wasn't cruelty. This was clarity. He didn't hate people. He understood them. He understood that control was the obsession of fools, and mastery was the patience of those who wait, observe, and build slowly, silently, until the shape of things bends itself around them. And so, while others fought for crowns and thrones and noise, he built something else, invisible, lasting, deeper than obedience. He became the gravity that others mistook for their own will. That's the final illusion, the deepest one, to shape a man's steps so subtly that he never doubts they were his own. That is not control. That is authorship. Machiavelli had no need to enslave people with chains or dictate orders with the blunt instrument of fear. His craft was subtler, more elegant. He let you walk free only after laying every stone on the path beneath your feet. You felt autonomous, independent, but the direction was already written. What he understood, and what so many miss, is this: most people don't need a master. They only need a mirror, something that reflects their hunger, their hope, their secret fears, and then gives them permission to act as if they have chosen their role. If you can become that mirror, they'll never look away. They will call it trust, even love. And that trust, that affection is worth more than 1,000 decrees. He knew that if you give people a story to believe in, they will suffer, sacrifice, and even destroy themselves in its name. So he never imposed belief. He whispered narratives. Not loud, not obvious. Quiet, incomplete, like puzzles half solved. People filled in the rest themselves. That's the trick. You don't control their minds. You invite them to complete the picture. And when they do, when they invest their own meaning into your structure, they become its guardians. They will defend what they think they created. He knew that power lasts only as long as its foundation is invisible. Show them the gears and they will recoil. Show them their reflection and they will kneel. So he buried his intentions beneath layers of flattery and silence. He listened more than he spoke. He let fools believe they were wise. He let the proud believe they were safe. And when it was time, he acted with a calm so unnerving, it made kings sweat and poets weep. His words cut deeper than swords because they were not words, they were verdicts. Truths that had ripened in silence until they became undeniable. Machiavelli never needed to shout. He simply waited for everyone else to speak themselves into ruin. He believed that chaos was not a threat, it was an opportunity. When people are confused, they cling. When they're afraid, they obey. And if you can keep your shape while the world around you dissolves, you become a symbol. People don't follow the loudest man in the room. They follow the most certain. And certainty was his domain. He made loyalty feel like logic. He made obedience feel like instinct. And he never asked for faith. He simply gave them enough comfort to forget they needed it. And yet there was no malice in him, only precision. He didn't hate mankind, he studied it. With the patience of a surgeon and the detachment of a mathematician, he wanted to know how power truly moved. Not in theory, not in parables, but in real blood and breath, in envy and doubt, in betrayal and silence. He walked through every corridor of the human soul, not to shame it, but to use it. He saw kindness used as camouflage. He saw virtue weaponized. He saw how often the words justice and truth were wielded by those who feared them most. And he thought, if people are going to be ruled by illusions anyway, let me at least choose the illusion. And so he crafted systems. Stories, conditions, not rules, not cages, but climates. And in those climates, people made the right choices over and over again, never seeing the hand that shaped the weather. He understood that every man is governed by the thing he dares not say aloud. The father who fears irrelevance, the lover who fears abandonment, the thinker who fears being forgotten. And if you can speak to that silence, if you can name what they don't dare name, you own them without ever touching them, and that ownership is invisible, eternal. They will call it trust. They will call it destiny. That is what made Machiavelli dangerous. Not his ambition, not his cunning, but his ability to touch the root without being seen. He knew how to move entire nations with a glance, how to break alliances with a sigh, how to bend the arc of history with a whisper, because he understood what the crowd does not, that people do not change by principle, they change by tension. And if you can build the right tension, they will collapse into your vision willingly. He saw that freedom, too, can be designed, that if you offer people just enough choice, just enough chaos, they will beg for order. And if your order feels familiar, if it reflects their vanity or fear or longing, they will wear it like armor. They will call it peace. They will never know they were shaped. He didn't seek applause. He measured shadows, read silences. And in those shadows, in those long echoing silences where others grew anxious. He found control. He found the pulse of nations not in their kings, but in their doubts. That is why his name endures, not because it is loved, but because it is feared. Not because it shouts, but because it still speaks in rooms where no one admits to listening. He never gave us hope. He gave us the mirror, and many hated him for it. But those who listened, those who dared to understand him, learned how to endure. Machiavelli taught us that to master people is not to dominate them, but to disappear inside their vision, to become the unspoken rule behind their thoughts, the soft gravity beneath their choices, the calm behind the throne. The smile behind the command dot to master people is not to trap them. It is to free them inside a cage they no longer see dot. So now the question is yours. In a world of louder voices and brighter lies, can you still move in silence? Can you still shape without showing? Can you still become the one who holds the reins, not in your hand, but in their desire? Because the rules have not changed, the masks have, but underneath the noise, the machinery is the same. Influence is quiet. Power is slow, and those who last, they do not declare. They design dot, and if you've heard something in these words, if something old and dangerous stirred in you, something you've always known but never dared admit, then you already understand. This isn't about history. It's about vision, and vision doesn't ask for permission. Dot it. Whispers dot, so listen closely. If this resonated with the silence you carry, don't let it die there. Dot subscribe. Share. Reflect dot, because in the end, it is not the crown that rules dot, it is the one who teaches others how to wear it. And Machiavelli never wanted the crown. He simply wrote the script.